Oh yeah, I'ma say it. Oh, I'ma say it. Checo's revenge arc has begun. Oh, come on, you knew I was gonna say it. But seriously, this is gonna be good, and he's got a really, really good partner in crime. Yes, Bottas is a curious pick, but alongside Checo, it shows Cadillac wants to go steady and serious, not flashy. Sure, I was a bit disappointed at first at Mick Schumacher not getting the cut, but I get it entirely. This is a lineup built for long-term stability, and the reaction online has been fascinating. Especially considering if you were to take a time machine back to just 12 months ago and said, hey, Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas will be the main drivers over at Cadillac, what was Andretti at the time, people would think that is the worst lineup you could ever have. But then with the power of hindsight, you've really got to consider what was going on at both of those teams. So ultimately, those two are a pragmatic choice, and I can respect that. And also, I can understand why Sergio Perez, in various media interviews, has been quite keen to push back at all of the stuff that he's had to deal with for the past 2.5 years or so, which have really made a dent in his overall reputation within Formula One. This kind of a revenge arc, I think, will be somewhat different to ones I have described in the past. And yeah, it turns out I was actually wrong. Bottas is going to have to serve that grid penalty anyway. I guess I misinterpreted that. But yeah, either way, Checo and Bottas, they are men with common backgrounds, with them both knowing what it's like to be a number two. Because if you're thinking about that, no. And this experience for Cadillac will be gold, especially in that first season when it really matters and how they establish themselves. And so far, you've only got to look online. Oh, they're doing just fine. But we're talking about Checo right now, and my thoughts about this fellow have evolved over the time I've been up this ladder. I'm not ashamed to admit that I did get swept up in all of the media concerning Perez not showing up in comparison to Max back in 2023. But now I feel like I've managed to evolve and fully understand the context of situations and to not go into things nearly as blindly. I hold my hand up and say, yeah, I did get swindled and bamboozled by the British media. And that Checo had a point, that the design philosophy of Red Bull was simply and utterly flawed and has now been demonstrated by his successors, Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda. Him, Checo saying, have not been able to score double figures between them, whereas he was able to at least get 14 1-2s with Max Verstappen during his tenure. Here are his thoughts about that for your consideration. Obviously, they, Red Bull, have a unique talent over there with Max. It's very difficult for the second driver that is there to basically adapt to the car. It's a very unique car, very unique driving style that I managed, I say, to survive for many years. But it's difficult, and it's the way it works, you know? And you've seen it with great drivers just before my time, or even after my time. I think Yuki and Liam, they've scored like 5 points or something like that. I believe it's something like 7. And they're fantastic drivers, you know? Sometimes I could cope with it, I could adapt to it, but as soon as there was a variable with the rain, with the wind, or something, it just became undrivable. And then you start making mistakes one after the other, you are losing confidence. But mentally, I was super strong. He's not kidding there, he was actually quite resilient. And that's why I survived there for so long, because I did have a lot of pressure and a lot of you guys, journalists, were onto me. And now you realize the job I've done in that car and that team. Now you see what I mean here, Checo is not beating about the bush, he's coming back at the journalists hard, and he is right to do that. He's going out there swinging. I mean, metaphorically of course, not literally, otherwise that would make headlines for all the wrong reasons. I personally would argue the tide began to turn after his win in Monaco 2022, and then really hit a peak in Brazil 2022 when Max Verstappen would not help him in trading positions. So that means Checo had a better shot at getting P2 in the championship. But before you say anything about anti-Max stuff, Max made it clear it had nothing to do with Checo, it was about his own personal sentiments toward the team. It is important to note that their relationship was never the toxic rivalry some headlines pushed. Yes, there was tension, where wouldn't there be? But Max did respect Checo's graft, and Checo himself has called Verstappen supportive on many occasions. The friction was always more to do with Red Bull's management about the situation than the drivers themselves. Checo said that Max was one of the first people to congratulate him with his new job, confirming the take that Max had a month or so ago. But nevertheless, I feel like really Red Bull were hamstrung from all the negativity that was surrounding Max Verstappen before Honda came along in 2019, when there was the very real danger that if they didn't get their act together and started winning races on the regular, consistently, and maybe fighting for a championship, that Max could maybe walk. Any threat to that stability that Red Bull had managed to manifest with their main driver could easily be seen as a threat. That's when I think the tunnel vision began, in my honest opinion, where the technical team really just gravitated toward one man. The reference to Yuki and Liam, it's not a dig at them. I think it's more like a rhetorical lever almost, just to say, hey, look at those two. I'm proving my point here. And then let's not forget what Mario Andretti said about their investigations into Checo, that what they were going through, those two youngsters, made Checo look even better. Because I'm pretty sure that Cadillac had their own foams of doubt regarding Sergio. They had every right to. But they did do their due diligence. Dan Powers, the CEO of the entire group, has said they went very long and deep with Red Bull, talked to many representatives, and then believed that Sergio was indeed fit for the job, including Jonathan Wheatley, now in charge of Audi, who arguably will be Cadillac's main rival next year, and say, yeah, Checo's a good guy. I think you're going to do well with him. I've not really heard a bad word against him from anyone within Red Bull, but the overall management of the unit just simply was not compatible with the Mexican, with the Dutchman there. But again, nothing personal between the two. That's just the way it was in the Horner era. And I'll just put the phone away now because I am very much in confidence with this one. He really wants to improve his career management, Checo's, to remind people about the stuff that happened before Red Bull Racing, to showcase to brand new fans who may not have been around at the time of Force India, Racing Point, Sauber. Maybe let's not remember McLaren. Checo was god of the midfield, where he could get podiums out of nowhere, make those tyres sing and dance for longer than many people expected. He's not asking for the world here, it's more of a simple request when you think about it. Just give him a car with a broader balance window, something that's more forgiving to set up, so he can just chase feeling rather than a singular setup target or something, which Helmut Marko often loves to do, and did do with Liam Lawson out of the gate. And if all that can be met, then I think Checo's baseline will be absolute gravy. He most likely told Cadillac all of this as part of their own discussions before the deal was done, but this time around, his words are aimed toward us, the fans, and the journos who downgraded him, and admittedly all of the content creators who did ride on the narrative. And once again, I do apologise about that, but I feel like I've learned a thing or two, and I am more than happy to tell the world about all of the stuff that Checo had to deal with, what he was trying to telegraph with Red Bull, which ultimately got ignored because things were going fine with Max, so what's the problem? So I therefore wish Checo well with his adventures with General Motors, and I think he also touches upon a truth that many fans don't really want to tackle, is that driver fit is equally as important as general talent. And this isn't anything new for Red Bull, and arguably you do have to remember that Adrian Newey designed those cars in which Checo had to endure, as well as the people before him, and arguably the template of what Yuki and Liam has had to deal with. Things that rewarded one driver's touch, Max's, and it's brilliant when it works for him, but brutal for anyone else. And you compare that to McLaren's philosophy. They build a car that both Lando and Oscar can extract pace from, and in the case of Lando, tweak it that little bit extra to make even more come out of the guy. And that contrast is why Checo's comments hit home. If your style clashes with the car's DNA, at Red Bull, the costs stack quickly, and therefore it leaves you susceptible to that dang Austrian doctor who will tear you a new one, completely eviscerate you with the English-speaking world, who hang on every single detail that Helmut Marko says regarding his own drivers, and then what are you gonna do? And then you spiral. That's exactly what we saw with Liam Lawson, but only at quadruple, quintuple, sextuple, nomortical, dodecahedral speed. 2 races. So many instances where you got Liam giving it his all, feeling like he was at the peak of his powers, and then just going, I don't know what's going on here, I can't explain it. But fortunately, I think Red Bull will be fixing this because they're doing really well with Liam Lawson, and hopefully they can help restore Isaac Hadjar's confidence, because he is having a bit of a wobble at the moment. Even though he is saying that he is doing the business, he is happy, but he is really, really hard on himself. And he hasn't really been scoring as many points as he did at the beginning. I feel like he will improve himself, and he's even really shown a bit of concerns about being called up to Red Bull for next year. That's a really telling tale, but also a good sign that Racing Bulls might be onto something that the senior team under Laura Mekies can then implement themselves. You know, fine-tuning individual cars, and it doesn't detract from the main vehicle itself, the template. And taken as a whole, that comment I shared with you, the quote, I don't think Checo's making excuses. He's just trying to highlight that Red Bull built a rocket ship with one driver in mind alone, to take names in 2023 especially, and he was sort of left to the wayside. Something that McLaren, importantly, is not doing. Perez says he could mimic it on good days, and he did manage to amass over a dozen 1-2 finishes, But then the Mexican fell off a cliff when the wind blew, and the team weren't willing to change course. But what Checo has been able to demonstrate in context to what his successors did is that he at least kept himself from falling off that cliff a little bit longer than the others, but not for forever. So whether you buy that or not, I do feel like it does make you rethink what was going on at Milton Keynes at the time, and then maybe think again that the Milton Keynes of the future will be a lot more of a considerate and forward-thinking team. Racing Bulls then brought to Red Bull. So yes, a rethink is something that I think is really, really important here. And I do think a rethink is part of Checo's revenge arc. Everyone rethinking about what he can offer Formula One. Sure, he and Valtteri Bottas may be in their mid to late 30s. They are very much at the sunset period of their careers, but it's not all done and dusted yet. Yes, and I also think a rethink should be done with Daniel Ricciardo fans, with many people saying that, oh, it really, really sucks that Cadillac ignored Daniel Ricciardo. No! The Australian didn't want to come back. He did not want to come back. Let him be happy with his clothesline. In short, he does not have the motivation to race anymore. Whereas Checo and Bottas, they have heaps of motivation. And as Fernando Alonso has been able to prove for many, many years, as long as you've got the fire in your belly, you can keep going. But as I touched upon a moment ago, the revenge arc of Checo's does hit differently to Carlos Sainz's one, the more infamous one on this channel. Whilst the Spaniard is looking to find a strong foundation in which to mount his ultimate legacy within F1, the purpose of Checo's revenge arc is more to do with shifting the perception around him back toward a model that better reflected his entire career, something of which has been skewed terribly within the second half of his Red Bull tenure. And that has been especially detrimental since 2022. Formula One's fandom has absolutely skyrocketed. It's leagues beyond where it was back when Checo was absolutely doing the business at Sauber in his rookie and sophomore years. That was crazy. No wonder McLaren chose to hire him, despite the fact he was completely incompatible with that team under Ron Dennis, and Jenson Button definitely got the heebie-jeebies with that guy. It was simply not a fit. But then he managed to bounce back from that, Force India. Oh, the stuff he was able to do there, absolutely magical. If you're a brand new fan, go and watch Checo from 2014 through 2017 especially. It's absolutely terrific what he's able to do with that car. And in an interview he conducted with Crash.net, it provides a more measured and reflective tone about what he wishes to accomplish, as was what he wishes to address regarding his Red Bull stint. And he's also quite realistic in understanding where the team is and where it will end up while he remains with them. I suspecting that he and Bottas' deal will maybe be like a 2 or 3 year deal at most. After that, it's kind of hard to say whether or not they would want to still be racing when they're approaching 40. But if their fire remains burning, then who knows? But anyway, here are those comments for your consideration. Ahem. To me, it's more of a comeback to enjoy the sport. I couldn't afford to leave the way I left the sport, and this is why I'm coming back with this new project. I hope it's a very successful one, but amongst that, more than anything, I want to enjoy this comeback. It's also important to reset my targets from the past, but also I'm here to progress together with the team. I'm sure that we're going to start in a very difficult position, but to me, it's not where we start, it's how quickly we manage to progress. That's the main thing, because at this point in my career, let's say that one trophy more, one less, it's irrelevant. I want to be able to enjoy the ride, but also just give my very best every single weekend. And if I'm able to do that for 24 weekends, then I'll be really happy. Now, if you stack that with the previous quote, it seems to me that what Checo's doing right here is to close one chapter of his career with intent and therefore take authorship of the entire Sergio Perez story that has unfolded and will continue to unfold for at least the next couple of years. He's taking charge of his destiny. How he thought his destiny was going to end with Formula One back in December was with a truckload of tequila and then a hurriedly rushed out press release without him even in the room. I mean, sure, it's not the most boring way of exiting Formula One, you attached to a buttload of booze, but it's not the most, dignifying way, now is it? Earlier, he framed Red Bull as a place where the car and culture tilted toward a single way of driving, and right here, he reframes his next move as a personal reset to enjoy his time, where he doesn't have to do that, and he can rewrite the story, get it back to where he was at the height of his popularity, to highlight the hard graft that Cadillac sure expects from both he and the Finn, whilst also making it quite obvious that he's not setting lofty targets. And I can believe him not setting lofty targets since, well, I'm in a loft. And you might be arguing, well, wait a minute, him talking about not caring about gaining more trophies, surely that means that he's phoning it in, right? That he doesn't really care about pushing toward the top? Well, no. I could easily imagine that being at Red Bull, especially when the car was something that Checo could actually deal with, him getting on the podium almost became commonplace, whereas at Force India, Racing Point, it was once in a blue moon, and it was something really big to celebrate, a really big deal. But now he's having to go back to maybe where it was around the Sauber days, right at the beginning, where if you could get a P3, or Malaysia 2012 a P2, then that is the absolute zenith, like winning a championship. And he's also accepting the reality that organically, Cadillac is not going to get into the podium positions unless something freakish happens up there. Heck, a top 5 finish is something that it took them 3 years to get there. And then 2018, they just came like buses. For Cadillac, with no baseline yet, Checo's mindset has to be real. Avoid sky-high expectations that could spiral if he goes out of Q1 or something. And remember, Cadillac isn't Audi. Audi are building off Sauber's foundation, and they're already competitive in all but name. And the team really value him. There are no foghorns within the garage to cast judgment before the driver can have his say, like it was at Red Bull. And yeah, Cadillac and General Motors are huge entities in of themselves, but they're going into F1 understanding the realities of coming into something they have no prior experience of. The driver announcement, all of the media buzz that we've seen from the last couple of days, wandering around New York, Keanu Reeves really bedding himself in within the Cadillac organization as part of the docu-series he's producing with them as they prepare for Formula One and then ultimately debut off the back of the Brawn docu-series, which I really recommend. Keanu does have some goodwill knowledge. It just shows and screams to the world that, hey, we're serious about this. This is Andretti in a really nice, glamorous ball gown. That it's the same hard-working, serious-thinking business that Michael Andretti and Mario Andretti set up originally a couple of years ago, and now people in F1 are taking them seriously. It's a shame you had to come to that, but at least that project that Andretti started does ultimately get to see Melbourne. But what I think we've all learned from this is that Formula One does not forgive and forget, because what Michael Andretti did happened in 1993, and the former head of Liberty Media still remembers that and really held it against him for over 30 years. It shows how petty Formula One and Liberty Media can get, but it also shows how quickly things can change when a really big multinational company comes a-knocking. Andretti has a really big name, but within motorsport. Overall, in terms of marketability, internationally, General Motors does carry that little bit extra weight, I'm afraid. That's just the way things go. But again, I am glad that this project is actually becoming a reality. And having Bottas and Perez, these are drivers that people already know and people can get behind. And again, weekly, Audi's TP, their main rival, says that Checo's a good pick. That's something I think you really should take stock of. You do not need a foam of doubt for that. You might think that they're playing it safe. Well, I guess they have to play it safe if they want to be around for a long time, to the point where they can be in a position to take a punt on younger drivers, maybe not experienced drivers at all, perhaps proper greenhorn rookies maybe, who knows? But right now, they just can't do that. I remind you of what happened with Williams and Logan Sargent. They were not in a fit position to help out one of their own academy drivers. I don't think Cadillac ultimately could do the same thing. Even for a guy like Mick Schumacher, who does have a couple of years of experience, hey, I hope that Cadillac take him on for the Jota operation. I think he could be good there. But, oh well, okay. I know I'm a Mick stan, but I accept defeat here. And yes, I will get to the part that some of you cynics out there might be expecting, and maybe demanding. Cadillac are going to make bank with these two. Especially if the rumours are true that Checo has managed to broker a deal as part of his contract that he gets a cut of all the merch sales, and some reports were saying that 65% of Red Bull's online merchandise sales were for Checo merch alone. And now that Kit Kat is a major sponsor of not only Gabriel Bortoleto but Sergio Perez, oh, can you imagine if Kit Kat came on as a title sponsor of Cadillac? Kit Kat Cadillac, Kit Kat Cadillac. Oh, it's too perfect not to use. Cadillac, if you're watching this, please get in touch with Nestle. Kit Kat Cadillac has to happen. But the question is, though, will Cadillac gain momentum from signing on these number 2 drivers of the past? Short answer, yes. But you know me. I don't do short answers here. I think the early reaction online suggests that Cadillac may have bitten off a little bit more than they expected. I don't think they could have anticipated the positivity on display here. The tone from what I've observed is that they've chosen solid grown-ups to build around, with, yes, the usual age jokes mixed in, but the team doesn't seem to care. It wants grown-up, because grown-ups, operationally speaking, they don't mess about. They've been around the block a few times to not put up with any kind of BS or dilly-dallying or pussyfooting. And with them on board, if General Motors and Cadillac don't really perform and they do end up being 10th or 11th or something like that, then they can frame it as, hey, this is our learning year. We're learning what we can and we will be better next year. But it would be a huge tour de force if they could get what I think should be their ultimate target of P8, because that will mean that they've beaten 3 established teams. That would be absolutely huge for them. And it also spares any rookie suffering the slings and arrows of what we've seen in modern Formula 1, where many rookies don't really get the time of day to bed themselves in. I know we all wanted Jack Crawford to be there because he is American, he is doing really well in Formula 2, but maybe this is for the best, at least for now. And yeah, I can't really emphasize this any further. Perez is a commercial juggernaut. He's a national hero. If you attach him to any of your products or brands or team, you are going to generate sales and kudos. And General Motors is really wishing to push into the Mexican market. They're building a brand new EV in Mexico. So if you just have Checo driving it, him standing next to it with a big thumbs up and a smile, people are going to buy it because Checo has endorsed it. And if it's reported that Telcel, Claro, KitKat, all of Sergio's sponsors are going to be on board with Cadillac as part of this deal, then I don't expect at all that Cadillac car to be barren and have no stickers on it. It's probably going to be heaped with stickers all over the place. They are not going to be an underfunded team, and General Motors will be very happy about that they won't have to be footing the bill for this entire operation, especially considering next year's cost cap is now going to be north of $200 million. And then with Bottas, he adds a different kind of value, as you've obviously seen, because anything that Bottas posts, everyone just goes, Bottas funny. He brings a large, friendly footprint with general sports fans and lifestyle audiences, as well as credibility from his long stint with Mercedes. US outlets, they're already spelling out why they balance personality and experience, and again, Valtteri is embracing Gen Z chaotic marketing, which works well with his unhinged humour, not to mention his willingness to make a spectacle of himself for the fun of it. So one thing is for sure, Cadillac have 2 drivers who know how to play the game, how to work with sponsors, how to drive the car, how to establish a team. Bottas could have done so much more for Alfa Romeo if Andreas Seidel and the management and the attachment with Audi and their jitteriness toward their Formula 1 project meant that that team could actually do stuff. Bottas said that that entity was a mistake because Seidel was too busy in controlling the team and trying to take it away from Audi. The drama behind the scenes is absolutely epic. Poor Valtteri, poor Zhou. I feel bad for both of them. Now, of course, none of this guarantees Cadillac points or podiums, but what it does mean is that the team has already banked brand equity, the sponsor leverage, and a friendlier public runway than most debutants, because people like the drivers, and therefore, they might like the team as well. And the upside of all of this, the reaction that Cadillac has received from confirming Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez after months of speculation, more patience from the get-go. That is a really strong and useful thing to have, and will provide a really, really solid floor for Checo to rebuild his reputation with. So therefore, Perez's revenge arc starts here. Not on a ladder, obviously, but in trying to convert survival at Red Bull to authorship at Cadillac. Because at Red Bull, the car was built for one man and it wasn't him, and therefore he got blasted for it. Cadillac, they'll be able to judge him on their terms and his terms. Yeah, Red Bull keeps the trophies that he amassed for them, but Checo ultimately keeps the story, this time with him as the definite protagonist. His revenge isn't spite or pettiness, I think, but the kind which will foster competence under a team that actually will get to see him for who he ultimately is. A good driver, a great marketer, and an all-round good egg. So Checo may not face the same pressure next year, unlike these drivers this year. To see why these 5 or 6 are cooking under immense pressure, watch this video next, straight after this one.